in his mind right now, he's thinking, hey, let's extend these tax cuts that I did in 2017. Let's stop taxing uh, overtime and tips. And overtime would be beneficial for like service. So for people that are paid hourly, right, and they do get overtime, that would be beneficial for them. They'd have more money for their families. But especially in like people in the police force. I mean, just I have a client who's a sheriff in our area, and he has to work overtime just to kind of make ends meet, him and his family. And overtime is taxed pretty heavily, so that would be beneficial for them. You have more money, more discretionary income, you spend more money, discretionary income.
I'm gonna be honest. I didn't even know people reported tips. Like most, I know
Yeah,
people that have that they work in restaurants or whatever, and they make tips. But I've never heard anybody talk about reporting those tips unless they were in a situation where um, they work in a restaurant where a lot of the tips end up getting put in with the bill and they're
yeah,
paid through the credit card.
yeah,
Then they get they get taxed, obviously. But that's why I've always heard people say, oh yeah, make sure you tip in
yeah,
cash because then it can go straight to your
yeah,
server or whatever. And
yeah.
so I didn't even realize when he first said it, I'm like, it just sounded like something for votes, to be honest. It sounded like, how do I find a way to talk to the regular person? You know what? There are a lot of servers in in America, a lot of restaurants. Let me speak to those people.
Yeah.
A lot of casinos, a lot of bars, and that's a whole flood of votes that I can potentially get, even though in reality, it didn't seem like a huge deal, but it sounds like it's a bigger deal than I realized.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's Uber drivers and DoorDash, and there's a lot of tip
Hmm.
industries out there. Like, and then think about it this way, man. Like, there's people like in different states where their minimum wage is not very high.
True.
And yeah, if they're a server in some states, their minimum wage is even lower, and then they live off their tips.
Right.
And yeah, you're right. I mean, I know a lot of people aren't putting those cash tips on there,
Right.
right?
Right.
And
At all.
if you're gonna go buy something that's of high dollar value that you need to show your income for, and you're not taking that extra $5,000 in tips that you're getting, maybe you're not going to get approved for that loan that you're trying to get, that type of stuff, right? Just because you needed 5,000 more. I don't know. I'm just throwing
Yeah.
it out there, but if they are able to put those tips all on there and not be taxed for it and use it for their advantage to take out loans or whatever they need to do with showing their W-2 and income, I mean that's beneficial for the entire economy over time at
Absolutely.
least.
Absolutely. I do see
And
it that way.
so I mean think about like you can go buy a house in I don't know, let's say like Mississippi, for instance, right? Like let's look at properties in Mississippi. I mean, I'm sure you can find a nice house out there for under $100,000 still. I'm not, maybe it needs some work, but there's people out there who may not make a lot of money and they live off their tips that they, now all of a sudden they can put it on their W-2 or their 1040 at the end of the year, and now all of a sudden you're making a little bit more money, put you in that boat of getting an actual property.
Yeah.
So that's a benefit, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
when people buy houses, they buy bigger ticket items too: washers, dryers, dishwashers. They're hiring local contractors, so it's all kind of a perpetual thing, you
Yeah.
know. So that's a benefit. They're also talking about raising the SALT tax, so your state and local tax deductions, raising the cap on that, um, and then closing the carried interest loophole, which for you and I doesn't matter. These are more for like really really rich people, like billionaires and stuff. And
He always has to have his stuff for billionaires, boy.
Well,
Yeah.
he's actually closing the loophole on it, so actually making it harder for billionaires to use that as as a
Oh,
benefit for their taxes. So he took an example where he said, okay, at this what was it? Wasn't like the LA Lakers? I don't know. It was some sports team. He
uh-huh.
said, okay, there's a lady in here and she's hucking peanuts, and her tax, she's in a 22% tax bracket essentially. She's a single lady, single female, making whatever amount. She's in the 22% tax. I think it was like 60,000 or something. Then
Okay.
you have like who else is on the court? LeBron, maybe it's the Lakers. LeBron James. LeBron James is getting, he's making 200 million a year, and his tax bracket is, whatever, 36%, right? Then you have the billionaire who owns this place, who's making all this money on it. He's actually only getting paid like he's only getting taxed 11% on his entire income. And
Wow.
so he was like, "Oh, that's kind of frustrating." Like you have a billionaire out here making a ton of money, and all of a sudden he's only getting taxed 11%. It was like 11.6 or something. You could probably find the article where he was talking about
Yeah. Yeah.
it. But the point is he's saying like this doesn't make sense. I mean, can LeBron James stand to pay 36% of his income? Sure, of course. But can this lady making 54,000 stand to pay 22% of her income in income taxes? I mean, that's pretty tough. I mean, especially if you're trying to live. Can this billionaire stand to pay 25% or whatever his income is, 36%, right? And a lot of that is the carried interest loophole. So essentially, if you go buy a sports team, you have the say a county or a state says, hey, you move your stadium here, and you're going to pay for all this, but we're going to give you a ton of tax breaks for the team, and then as well too, you're going to be able to deduct the cost of this off of your assets, and there's a lot of deductions that they get to take,
Mhm.
and so they're putting a lot of money out there, but they're also not being taxed even their fair share. So his whole point was, okay, well, we need to get rid of some of these
Okay.
deductions, and they're going to have to pay their fair share.
And so, what is this loophole called?
I think it's called the carried interest loophole, carried
All right.
interest deduction loophole.
I,
And
I
I'm not
won't.
an accountant, so maybe bring an accountant on to ask you to explain all this more
No,
for
no,
you.
all good. I'm not. I won't hold you to it that severely, but carried uh interest
Interest,
loophole.
yeah,
All right. I'm gonna keep a note of that for both of us, and because I'll be honest, to me, that sounds incredible, but it doesn't sound in alignment with some other things that he did in the first term. So I'm
yeah,
skeptical. I'm
oh yeah,
skeptical. I'm skeptical of that's one of those um, pushback against the narrative things. It
yeah,
sounds really
yeah.
good. You know what? And he's almost trying to connect.